A huge challenge of high-income professionals, especially when they're in complex problem-solving roles, is how do you promote yourself without giving confidential information away, without risking certain types of laws, rules, and regulations, and otherwise sounding believable. I'm Justin Hitt from Inside Strategic Relations. If you want to build your career and you want to grow your opportunity in the marketplace, it has to be known the value you can deliver to your specific clients, employer, or opportunities. In fact, you should go as far as documenting the benefits, and I'm going to give you some of these tools that you can use, documenting the benefits of hiring you that justify the higher incomes. See, we have a problem today where income isn't everything. There's lifestyle, the accessibility, whether you work in a state that's free or not free. There's a lot of factors, good company, bad company. All those aside, you should not work for an organization who is paying you substantially below market. Now, in order to gain market or above market benefits or total compensation, you have to be a performer that can pay for themselves. So these things are going to help you tastefully self-promote yourself. They're going to help you build up the credibility in the marketplace that you demand a higher income or compensation package. Maybe even variable work experience or flexibility in how you engage that company, whether you want to be a consultant or an employee or a temporary contractor. But ultimately, how do you inform or help a decision maker know these things? Because we all know that resumes do not telegraph the full extent of the value you deliver to a company. So I'm going to bullet point some of these items out. There are many more that we talk about this in our peak performance, but we can start with things like the use of a success ledger. A success ledger you're going to use to document your successes over time when they're fresh in your mind, when you get kudos. It could be some folders on a shared drive or your own private drive, but you're going to document those successes in case study format. So I'll give you an example of a case study. In my own career, and I'm reading a card in front of me. You should be able to memorize these things and put them right out there. And I'm just summarizing a card. And the summary is saved $25 million contract at risk of cancellation. So this is something I've done. There was a $25 million contract. I was hired to figure out why the customer wants to cancel this contract and why this contract is going to get canceled if something dramatically doesn't change. Now, what I had to do is assess the problems from the government clients, peers, contract managers, and the program leadership. I had to develop a plan that 1, improved communications, 2, increased effectiveness, and 3, applied technical resources in a diverse program and software engineering environment. Can you see what I'm doing here? I state the high level, and then I'm bullet pointing the kind of the process I had to assess and make a decision or develop a plan, and then I describe the characteristics of a plan. Now, this card has stuff on the back, how much it was overall worth, what were some of the challenges we faced. All that can go into a case study, but the initial statement, save $25 million contract from cancellation, is what goes in your success ledger. These other elements are case studies or evidence that give you a chance to look at how did you make this happen? Who did you work with to make this happen? What were the challenges and problems? What were the result of these challenges and problems? What were some of the solutions that were tried? What worked and what didn't work? And you're going to end up with about a 1.5-page memo that summarizes this experience. It gives you an opportunity to digest it in your mind, to identify key players, because we all know that in top dollar positions, it's not just you solving these problems. It's usually you and a team. It's your ability to communicate, such and such. So this success ledger leads to these case studies. And now, and we'll talk about it towards the end of this podcast, now you start to have some artifacts. What else can we look at? You want to mask public details. So I described what I did, but I don't want to necessarily just put that on my website. I don't want to put that on LinkedIn, because it contains competitive information. Now, when did I save a $25 million project from cancellation? Well, that was back in the 90s. So maybe today I can talk about it. But at the time, it would not be good face for my employer to talk about. They knew a contract was going to get canceled, and they hired somebody specifically to keep the contract from getting canceled. And this is a little covert. It may have been an open secret, but it's not something they want in the public. So you're going to mask public details. Do you work with company sensitive information or consent orders or matters requiring attention? Well, you can't just call those out. Even historically, you have to call them business initiatives or a priority project because of the sensitivity of these long multi-year activities. So what we're going to do is we're going to mention that you've worked with sensitive projects. You've interacted with executives. You've interacted with board members. But you're not going to spell it out, especially in a public forum. Now, in some cases, you can't even mention it in a job interview because of the risk of what they call spear phishing. If you're on LinkedIn, you very often will get contacted by PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, and they have these weird interviews where they're asking for, give me a specific example when you worked with a consent order, blah, blah, blah. Those are questions designed to extract information. And because that's a really real thing from a competitive intelligence perspective and from a sensitivity of issues, you're solving big problems. That's why they're paying you big dollars. You don't necessarily want that information floating around. So, for example, there was an environment where I was sent in as a technical person to substantiate several managers looking at offensive materials online in a secured environment and to substantiate that information so it could be handed over for a legal case. Okay, that's all I can say about that. I can't say what project I worked on, who I worked with. All I can do is describe the methodology for extracting this information. So I want to remove the specific who, what, when, where, and move towards the process. And very often you can do this in your world. If you've worked with a project that has export restrictions, you can't explain what you weren't allowed to export, but you can certainly describe how you determine what is permissible and what is not permissible for export. So if you're a risk management professional, if you work in compliance, if you work in a legal firm, there are certain things, certain specifics you cannot mention, but you can give a clue on the website that you work with, or on a LinkedIn, on your resume that you worked with sensitive information. And then when they ask about sensitive information, you obviously don't give them the sensitive information. You give them the process, how you knew it was sensitive, the general program, the authoritative source, or the law, rule, or regulation. Like, for example, I work with Regulation W. I work with Regulation K. Now, if somebody asks specifically, describe a Regulation K incident where you had to make a decision about such and such, I would move them to the processes and controls, because that's really where my work stands, and I would not provide them a specific information about a Regulation K review. But I could describe to them how a Regulation K review is done. Because remember, again, there's spear phishing. There's the risk of overstating your contribution. There's the details that are difficult to validate. And then ultimately, you could get placed in an impossible situation. Maybe you did help solve a consent order that was critical to the company. And the new company that's looking to hire you has the same damn problem. And now they believe that you're the magic sauce that's going to solve their big problem. Well, I know that many of these problems are way more complex than just plugging in one person. As much as we like to think that we can be the catalyst for such big things, unless they're paying you a significant amount of money to make it happen, it's never a one-person deal. So what else can you do on your promotion in a tasteful way? One thing I find works really well is private communications versus public. I might leave clues in the public, but I would actively go after the hiring managers, the recruiters, and the people who have the authority to hire you at the levels that you want to be hired. This is very important. I see too many recruiters just banging out asking for resumes. I will not send you a resume. As recruiters, I will not send you a resume until I'm sure that you have an actual position open and that I've talked with some kind of decision maker done an initial screening to see if I'm right for the position. I'm already busy enough. You're already busy enough that slinging resumes, if resumes got people jobs, people would be all working in the perfect career that they desire. By the way, 65% of employees are dissatisfied with their current position. Many consultants are dissatisfied with their positions as well, but they have more control over getting that next opportunity and ultimately can work more than one opportunity at a time. But here's my point. Nobody knows what the hell it is that you're doing. Even when you work for an organization, if you're highly effective, there's going to be somebody that says, what the hell do you do around here? I keep hearing your name brought up. Every time I have a problem, they send me to you. What are you doing around here? Again, it's the private conversations rather than the public. It's networking with hiring managers. It's becoming a recognized expert in your field. It's leaving clues in the public. Perhaps you have a newsletter that talks about the strategies for addressing different things. I did a big thing on privacy, and I can talk with authority on privacy, handling privacy of data. But I can't tell you specifically how a certain organization handles it. But I can tell you what the guidelines are according to the California Consumer Privacy Act, or according to the TCPA, or according to China just put out a new privacy law. I can give you that authoritative source. I can reference the materials in the public web space. I can offer commentary. And so you can put yourself in a position where you're demonstrating expertise without disclosing specific activities. Now, again, you do run the risk of overstating your value. Maybe you can describe how a certain law, rule, or regulation works, but you got no clue on how to actually implement it. So again, you have to be honest with yourself, but the less you share in the public space, the better. Now, if you're able to open up a dialogue with a hiring manager, maybe through a trade association, maybe through like a project management group, maybe through a local or regional club, you'll have the opportunity to describe shared experiences, still being mindful that you don't want to leak information. But ultimately, you can describe shared experiences and start getting that context so that when a problem happens, they say, you know what, I need to contact Justin Hitt. It's a risk management problem. It's a program management problem. It's a business development problem. I need to contact Justin Hitt because he has strategies that help transform business relationships into profits. Now, profits could be actually getting a project done. And profits could be solving big problems. You decide what it is for you. You're here to gain these soft skills because they are not taught. And with only 10% of the population earning above average 10, if you're in the top 10% of incomes, you're 1 out of 10 when it comes to people in the marketplace with that income. And so your likelihood of running into other people that do the same thing as you gets smaller and smaller as your income increases. Finally, there's a couple other points I want to leave you with. You want to be modest in the workplace. I'm teaching you how to brag, in a sense, how to promote yourself in the job market or in the career opportunity space. But in your workplace, you have to make sure the right people are getting credit. You have to make sure you're raising up the team. You have to be a team player. If you're in there boasting and I've made the mistake, believe me, I've run into a problem. I'm in a private conversation. I said, look, back in the 1990s, we solved this problem by doing X, Y, and Z. What I'm seeing happen today is the same thing. And here are the 4 gaps. Here are the 3 mistakes we made. And by the way, here is an approach that will work very clean. Well, that sounds overconfident. That sounds like I'm telling a supervisor or a leadership person what they should be doing. Instead, you've got to ask questions. The modesty is, hey, I've seen this problem before. Would you like some more information about how this is similar to a problem we solved on a previous project? Because remember, they're hiring you for your experience. They're hiring you for your knowledge. Now, here's the secret. You can go back to your success ledger, pull up the little case study, and then basically excerpt from the case study to give to your manager. Now, the manager or whoever you're talking with has a little bit of idea that you have a clue about what you're talking about because they don't want to risk having an inexperienced person who sounds good mess up on something. You now have a little bit of artifact, a little bit of evidence. Oh, by the way, I was featured in such and such a magazine and I wrote about this exact topic. Would you like me to get you a link? Now, when they say, yes, I'd like more information. Yes, I'd like to have a profile. Yes, can you give me a briefing? Now they're buying into your expertise and your ability to deliver. And again, this can happen both inside and outside of the current organization that you're in. But all the information is sanitized. You're not disclosing that you've identified some fatal flaw in a company and that, you could help them solve the same problem. You're offering that, hey, this is what our team did. This is why it works so well. And by the way, if you have me lead that team, would you like me to lead the team? I've shown you the evidence and ideas on how we can approach this. But if you like me to lead the team, I'm open to that opportunity. See, you're able to have a dialogue with somebody. They're able to validate the claims that you're making with public information, kind of the tidbits, because they've got more detail when they read major business initiative. They understand it's consent order. They understand it's major, could be a matter requiring attention. It could be a request from a regulatory body. But you haven't disclosed anything. And then when you've been praising other people along the way who have been part of that team that you use to solve the problem, they can go find that person and say, hey, Justin says he did such and such. Is that true? And they're like, yeah, Justin was great. We worked together. They're going to switch it to the we. You always want to switch it to the we. We worked together and here's what we did. And here's some of the outcomes. Now, a lot of people, because they don't have the success ledger, because they didn't write the case studies, because they didn't become a recognized experts, sometimes they just don't remember. They'll say, well, I don't remember, but that sounds about right. But nobody's going to say, oh my gosh, this guy does not know what he's talking about, because the success ledger was documented at the point of use. Now, you can use that success ledger for your inputs to a job evaluation or an annual review. You can use it as justification for increase in pay. But over the life of your career, this becomes a touch point to help you articulate the value you've delivered to an organization. And really, if it doesn't fit on an index card, you're not being concise enough. If it's not something that you can bullet in a benefit statement or a headline on a resume, then you're not being concise enough. Now, we can help you with those things. And I've worked with career coaches, and I can recommend some career coaches who can help you articulate the communications. But when you're making $180,000 a year, when you're making $250,000 a year, when you're making $450,000 a year, you can't just go in with a resume. You need a long history of evidence that demonstrates your value in such a way that a hiring manager can understand how they're going to apply your talents in their organization. Just like they're not going to tell you about all the problems they face, you're not supposed to tell them about all the details of other corporations and businesses. Now, I've talked about it in other programs. There is a strategy where you have open positions and you constantly target your competitors to get strategic information. What I'm offering here is not only protection against that, but a tasteful way to self-promote yourself and get out in the marketplace. Now, we can go further and talk about the syndication of insights. I mentioned an example of having an article in a magazine. Well, that gets you out in front of more hiring managers. Hiring managers might raise a flag, or a recruiter raise a flag and say, hey, we have this position. May not be right position for you, but you want to capture that information and keep them in the loop. And then ultimately, tastefully promote yourself over time so that when an opportunity opens up that's perfect for you, you're the first and only choice. I could go on I think I got a 3-day program that I go into this positioning yourself in the marketplace, building up yourself as a recognized expert, using success ledgers in order to justify the high salary, especially when companies are reorganizing. We talk about ways of lifting up the people around you so that they don't take all the credit. They recognize that you would contribute it, but they feel positive about recommending you so you can get some word of mouth. If you've got questions about any of this, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and you need to visit the website, www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Maybe you don't have a high six-figure income right now. Maybe you don't have the career or the opportunity you have right now. I would argue that the reason why is because you haven't been able to tastefully promote yourself. You've been too busy working, too busy grinding away to actually make a living. And this promotional element, it only takes 3 to 5% of your day. This promotional element actually improves your understanding of the value you can deliver. It helps recruiters and hiring managers understand your value and makes you a better value to the company that you're working for, whether it's an employment opportunity or a consulting opportunity. The key is, though, it has to be tasteful. Can't be bragging, and we have to be aware in the modern world of the risks, spear phishing, overstatement of contributions, how instantaneous communications are today, and the possibility of someone using your desire to be promoted as a means to extract information. Folks, I know I covered a lot today. If you have any questions or comments about what I've shared, just put them in the comments below. Or you can definitely visit our website at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Simply go to the contact link, contact the office by fax or postal mail is usually the best way to get a hold of me. And then, we're here to help you create and keep profitable customers, to transform business relationships into profits guaranteed. And defining those profits, tastefully self-promoting, it really is a guaranteed method. There is no other way of doing it. Thanks for listening. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations.